Steven Gerrard has won just 12 of his 35 games in charge of Aston Villa, which begs the question, has he actually improved them? Well, this is the 11 that Steven Gerrard has at his disposal, his first choice 11, if you like, what he would play this season. I've set them up in a 4-3-3, which is generally what they would like to play, although they have brought Coutinho in as a 10, and then you've got Watkins and Ings playing as a partnership. We'll just dip Leon Bailey out of there, but there are big question marks over Watkins and Ings and whether they work as a partnership. To me, it always looks a bit forced. It doesn't come naturally, and that makes life quite difficult because you want it to be natural. The more natural it is, the easier it is for you to create chances and to make it effective. But this is the setup either way, whether they go with the two strikers or the one. The crucial thing are these fullbacks. They push on, they get forward, and they are crucial to Aston Villa's attack. You've got two really good number 8s who are able to get up and down and really create things, and they can go beyond as well. I like Jacob Ramsey as a player a lot. Ollie Watkins is the focal point. They've improved their defensive setup with better players, and Villa will try and work these situations on either flank, little combinations, work the ball, boom, boom, get cash in behind and supply your striker. It's so easy. You've scored lots of goals. Well done, Ollie Watkins. That is the plan. And as I said, they've tried to protect this area to be better in transition, better defensively. Steven Gerrard wants Aston Villa to be a better possession-based team. But there are question marks over whether that is the actual identity of the team on the pitch. This is a lovely scattergram from friend of the channel, Mark Carey. You can see here is the speed of how Premier League teams attack and how direct they are, and here how many passes they play in those attacks. Manchester City take a lot of passes, they don't do it very quickly, they are in charge of everything. Aston Villa, bang in the middle. They maybe play slightly more passes, they may be slightly slower, but they are just in the middle here. That's probably a slight tendency from Steven Gerrard trying to bring in that possession-based element, but there's nothing particularly standout about the style they are trying to introduce. Now, this is a pretty good 11 and very good players as well on the bench. Emi Buendia, I'm obviously a big fan of. The problem you've got is that you've got big players brought in to improve Aston Villa defensively, like Carlos, like Kamara, who are now both injured. Your fullbacks, crucial positions, Matty Cash, Luca Digne, have both now become injured, and you have players up front like Coutinho, like Watkins, who are out of form. Coutinho is now 30. Is he the player he was? We're not sure, but we will find out, I'm sure. But the point is, he's not doing what he was doing last season, and he's struggling to make things happen. But it's also important to acknowledge this is not solely an issue for Aston Villa this season. This goes back to last season. We can see here from this rolling XG, 10-game rolling XG chart again. Thank you, Mark Carey. The blue line here is the goals Aston Villa would be expected to score from the chances they've created, and the red line is the goals they would be expected to concede from the chances they've conceded. Big red area, bad. Big blue area, good. Steven Gerrard took over here. He had to deal with this loss of Jack Grealish to either injury, as was the case for Dean Smith, and then selling him for £100 million to Manchester City. Jack Grealish, huge player, massive player to take out of this Aston Villa team, regardless of who you're bringing in. Gerrard brought in some intensity, he brought in renewed focus, made them slightly more organised, which helped reduce some of this goal chances conceded, but also brought in a really steady, healthy improvement in terms of their goal output. Aston Villa had 11 players that scored 2 or more goals last season, so they shared them around, kept it pretty consistent, and that delivered a healthy patch here. But it is worth saying, this part of the season here, once Aston Villa's fate was kind of sealed in mid-table, I think they finished 14th, they only won 2 games, and they were against Burnley and Norwich, who were both rubbish and got relegated. And you can see here, the chances they were conceding were causing them real issues, even though their attacking output was the same. This was causing them real issues. We get into this season, that defensive solidity hasn't really improved, it's pretty similar. But now, to compound the issue, Aston Villa's attacking output has dropped off a cliff, and you have a massive red patch. They are not scoring or creating enough goals to cause teams problems. Why not? Well, it's a very good question. In my view, Aston Villa have recruited, they've spent their money in defensive areas. The problem is they have signed only 1 player in attacking areas since they did their big Jack Grealish replacement exercise, and that is Coutinho, on loan and then permanently. He may well be out of form, as we've seen, but that is the only change they've made in these attacking areas. And the problem in the Premier League is if you do not evolve, if you do not change and keep things fresh, teams figure you out. It only takes a second time to face them. If you're doing the same thing, they will know how to stop you. So there's an element of form. It started off with Villa not creating good chances, and then the whole problem becomes a weight on your shoulders. Here is an opportunity against West Ham. It came early in the game. Villa have gone pretty direct. They're playing with Ings and Watkins as a front two. There is no one up in support in terms of this attack, and it's very isolated, and they're not really going to do anything with this, and they don't do it. And this made the highlights, by the way, so it was one of their better opportunities. And then again later in the game, this is a classic Aston Villa attack, really. We've got both fullbacks pretty high up. Watkins and Ings do a good job of switching positions, and that provides the run that allows Emi Buendia to play a through ball here. But as you can see, West Ham are pretty well organised. They've got quite a high line, and they kind of know what's coming. And for this to create a goal from this opportunity is pretty difficult. They're quite high up the pitch. It's a remarkable amount of precision that's required, and ultimately the ball is just a yard ahead of Ings and it rolls through to Fabianski. It's a very difficult chance. And again, this was one of the best opportunities Villa created at home against West Ham. So there is a degree of more predictability going forwards, but also teams know that the fullbacks are really important, and they are targeting the space behind those fullbacks to then score goals and to compound the form and confidence issues that Villa are facing. They know how to deal with that. They are getting in behind these areas. Just look at the goals Villa have conceded this season. So often they're coming from those spaces in behind both fullbacks. Which is why, credit to Steven Gerrard, he has made them more defensively sound. In recent games, the fullbacks are being asked to do less, and it's become a bit more direct in terms of feeding these strikers higher up the pitch and trying to work off that instead. One thing that arguably hasn't made Steven Gerrard's job any easier is the loss of Michael Beale. He was his assistant at Rangers and then at Aston Villa, widely credited for great tactical insight and work and the training methods that were going on. Beale left in the summer to join Queen's Park Rangers as their head coach, which, as we've already seen from our XG chart, is not when Aston Villa's problems started, so it's probably not entirely accurate to put it down to that. But although Neil Critchley has come in as Gerrard's new number two, it has been noticed, if you read some of Greg Evans' work on The Athletic, it's been noticed that some of the detail has been missing since Beale's departure. One point that I think does get lost is that Steven Gerrard is still a relatively inexperienced head coach. He managed Rangers for 200 games, where basically the task was to finish above Celtic, and that was it. In England, he's had 35 games. He's got a lot of clubs that are capable of finishing above Aston Villa. He's got lots of things to deal with. There are injuries to big players. He's having to bring in Tyrone Mings, who he took the captaincy off at the start of the summer. He gave that to John McGinn. Now people are questioning whether John McGinn's form is what it was. So many questions. All could have been avoided if he just left the captaincy alone. He didn't have to change it. It's also worth remembering that this is an Aston Villa as a club that are targeting top half football, European football. That is the goal. That is them kicking on. This whole setup is not designed to keep them in 14th place. They have to get better. Has Steven Gerrard made Aston Villa better? Well, yes, he has, by 0.08 points per game, or 2% in terms of win percentage. The question is, Aston Villa's ambitions are far higher than that. Do those expectations match what Steven Gerrard has to play with at the moment? I'm not so sure they do.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. There are journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.